But first, ITV News has learned that thousands of society's most vulnerable people are being locked away indefinitely. Families and campaigners say those with learning disabilities and autism are detained in secure units, sometimes isolated and sedated, because of a lack of funding and years of broken government promises. According to NHS figures in England, almost 2,000 vulnerable people are currently being held in mental health units. They're kept there for an average of 5.5 years, but 350 people have been in such units for more than 10 years. And in the first 6 months of this year, there were nearly 26,000 reported uses of restrictive methods, such as being kept in isolation or restrained either physically or with medication. Peter Smith's disturbing report begins with a mother whose son has spent his entire adult life in secure units, denied both freedom or a future.
Behind the high security fences, Rampton Hospital holds some of the most dangerous criminals. Paedophiles, rapists, murderers. Locked in with them is Adam Downs, a 31-year-old man with learning disabilities and autism. But Adam's not here because he committed a crime. He is a disabled man locked up because there's a shortage of care for people with his needs. His mother is fighting for his release.
I should just love to walk through there now and go and fetch him, you know, and say, oh no, you're not having him, you're not keeping him, he's coming with me, you know, but I can't.
Adam's mum wants him supported to live a full life out in the community, like other people with disabilities, but there's a lack of funding for this care. Instead, Adam is locked away under the Mental Health Act, moved between secure units since he was a teenager, and given medication. This is meant to be used for people who are mentally unwell, people who can be treated. But Adam's condition can never be cured, so he is locked up indefinitely.
I was told when Adam first went in that he would only be detained for a maximum of 6 months only. But that's not true, because he's still there 15 years later.
6 months to 15 years?
Yes, yes. If Adam gets upset because of what's going on around him, they will restrain him and seclude him.
At a previous unit, Adam was held in seclusion for 5 weeks, alone, staring at bare walls and a locked door.
I mean, you've got a mattress on the floor. They shut the toilet off and they made him go to the toilet in front of the cameras.
Alison, I know that if I were locked in a room in that environment for 5 weeks, it would drive me to breaking point. What does it do to your son with autism and learning disabilities?
Definitely. It would create such amount of distress.
Alison has to treasure the few photographs she has of her son.
It's changed tremendously. It's just a figure of himself, to be honest with you. He can't, you know, function properly because he's on high doses of medication.
It's worth reiterating that Adam has never been convicted of any crime, yet he has been detained his entire adult life. His mother says that it's the environment like this that triggers his autism and makes his behaviour worse. And the catch-22, of course, is that as long as his behaviour gets worse, the less likely he will ever be given a way out.
Adam is just one of around 2,000 people with learning disabilities and autism currently incarcerated. Now, a senior nurse who works inside secure units has come to ITV News to report institutional failures. She has more than 20 years of experience, and what she tells us raises concerns about patient safety.
Patients are being given medication they don't need. It's just to sedate them. They're also being locked up in the seclusion rooms for long periods of time when they don't need to be, just because the ward is short-staffed.
So people with learning disabilities and autism are being medicated, sedated, and locked up in seclusion when they don't need to be?
Yes.
And you've seen it?
Yes. It doesn't have to be staff hitting patients or verbally abusing them. The system abuses them. We have staff shortages and few will have any training in learning disabilities or autism. So they're regularly misdiagnosing these patients as having psychosis or schizophrenia and medicating them.
Have you tried to raise concerns or complaints?
Yes.
What happened?
People have seen me as a troublemaker. Nothing changed. Secure units are very secretive, so the public doesn't know what goes on. But as a nurse, I am meant to do right by my patients, and if I don't speak out now, I am not doing that.
This is a seclusion cell secretly recorded at another secure unit. Locked inside the cell, a young woman, Beth, who has learning disabilities and autism, is reaching out for her father's hand. Beth's dad smuggled a camera in, allowing us to see the reality.
So this is my contact with Beth for 3 years.
How did Beth respond to this?
She hated it. Beth wanted a hug more than anything in the world, and I couldn't do that. She was so broken that she would try and end her own life by using her clothing, using her underwear. Groups of men would storm into the room, they would pin her to the floor, remove her clothing. You don't treat animals like that. We shouldn't be doing it to human beings.
These images helped trigger a review of Beth's case, and her care has since gone from this to this. Beth is now happy and thriving.
Where Beth is now, she goes out every day. She talks to friends. She goes shopping. She does what I do. There's no reason she shouldn't have had that instead of being placed in a hospital.
If we know what these hospital environments do to people with learning disabilities and autism, why on earth do we keep sending people there?
Because it's easier. It saves the local authority, who, let's face it, they're all cash-strapped at the moment. It saves them having to provide the care, because the moment that a person is placed in hospital, it's NHS England that pick up the bill.
So we just lock them up, keep them sedated.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Over the last decade, the UK government has made a series of promises to end this practice.
We've got to do more to get people out of hospitals to make sure that people with learning disabilities are treated with respect.
Since then, recommendations from parliamentary reviews and inquiries to improve standards of care have been ignored.
It's barbaric, it's Dickensian. This is a human rights scandal. I think given everything we know, you can only really conclude that autistic people and people with learning disability just do not matter as much in the eye of the government.
Thousands of people with learning disabilities and autism remain incarcerated indefinitely. A scandal that nobody defends anymore, but a scandal that still continues. And so outside the high security fence, Adam's mum must keep waiting and keep fighting to see her son released.
And Peter's here. I mean, just shocking accounts. How can that treatment be justified?
Well, we asked Rampton Hospital. They say they won't comment on individual cases, but they strive to move people to environments with the least restrictions as soon as possible. The Department of Health offered us no comment at all. We talk about a cost of living crisis. Well, what we're seeing here is the cost of letting these people with learning disabilities and autism live is deemed too high, so they're locked up. We're hearing that they're inappropriately medicated, sedated, locked up in isolation to make life easier for the ward because they're understaffed. And this continues because the NHS continues to fund it. Many of the carers are saying they want the NHS to stop funding it. And something that I've heard from speaking to the community of carers here is that they're so terrified that if something should happen to them, if they died and they were unable to care for their loved one, that they would end up in a place like this, akin to torture. And you will hear parents say they hope their child dies before they do. It doesn't get much more damning than that. And that's why we've set up an investigation into this. If anyone has experiences they want to share, it's careinvestigation@itv.com.
Okay, Peter, thank you for that. Amazing. Now, let's